Fatherhood isn't easy, but in Autismland, it's a journey like no other. Join Mark de Grasse as we explore the highs, lows, and everything in between of raising children on the autism spectrum. With real stories, practical advice, and a touch of humor, we're here to navigate this unique journey together. For dads navigating life on the autism spectrum, you're not alone.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Dads in Autismland podcast, where we explore dads parenting with the autism spectrum, dealing with their kids, and finding more about themselves and their families and the world in general at the same time. Today I have a very special guest. We have Alfred Samson. His daughter is 7 years old. She has she's in the middle of the spectrum, we'll call it, and she has gone through several studies and has a potential study with the Harvard group, which is very fascinating. I'm very interested to find out more about that. So welcome, Alfred.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So, I know you have a daughter, which is actually pretty unique for the autism dads. A lot of the dads I talk to have sons, as that's kind of the higher percentage. So it's interesting that you have a daughter and you were able to get the diagnosis, and she's 7 now. I know you have another one on the way, so I'm sure you're busy in addition to daily life. But we can just start with your journey with Sophie and kind of finding out where she's at now.
Yeah, we found out we got the official diagnosis at about just over 2 years old. Our journey to finding out our daughter, kind of the first signs, had to do with some medical episodes. So from 0 to 12, very common theme that we're finding is that those babies were very good sleepers. It was very unusual. I remember something that stands out vividly, and my wife got a little roasted by other moms online as she would post, like, is it normal for babies to sleep 12 hours a night? And as new parents know, sleep is currency. It doesn't matter how rich you are. If you have a sleeping baby, you are a rich person. We didn't know those signs early on. Obviously, hindsight now, that seems to be a commonality. If somebody has a very well sleeping baby, that may be a sign. It's not always 100%, but that kind of happened. At 1 year old, our daughter had a seizure. It's not the seizure that people would normally associate when you hear the term seizure. You think of convulsing, you think of, non-control body movements. She had what's referred to as an absentee seizure. So basically her body went into a default mode. So her head kind of drooped. She had a blank stare, and she went into what I would call a labored, like a labored under breathing, I guess. It was like a it was just kind of, it didn't make sense. She was limp. She wasn't there. They chalked it up to too much time in the car seat at the time. So an ambulance had to pick her up. And for those that have never had a medical emergency for a young baby, it's pretty traumatizing. It kind of forces you to really kind of hone in and understand what's going on. So they tried to put some anti-seizure medication into her, but her veins kept exploding in her arm. So they had to do what's called an IO. So for people that don't know what that is, they grab a little it looks like a toy drill, and it's got a little clear cup on it, and they had to drill into her shin bone, and they put a needle directly into the bone marrow. At the time, it was borderline traumatizing. But after talking to the ambulance drivers and the doctors, this is something relatively new that's been like medically life-changing for a lot of people. People that have bone disorders, young children, it gets it directly into the bone marrow, and it is quickly into the bloodstream outside of finding a vein. We didn't know that at the time. Our jaws just hit the floor, and we're just like, we're trusting you with our child. It's, we kind of just didn't know what to do. And unfortunately, at the end of that, when she came to at the hospital with medical intervention and pharmaceutical intervention, we didn't really have a lot of answers. It was kind of just chalked up to maybe it was she got too warm in the car seat. We didn't really know what was going on, but that put us on hyper alert. We had a repeat event at 16 months. And that kind of, we started realizing, this is something else is going on here. So we got the official diagnosis of she had epilepsy. So when you have two undiagnosable episodes within 1 calendar year, they kind of put you in that category. Just gives you additional support. They do additional testing. So that really didn't bother us because we were hoping to get some answers. Fast forward, we had 2 more episodes. So she had 4 major episodes, but the last one was very unique. There was no medical intervention that got her out of it. She would continue to have these micro seizures, and I want to describe this a little bit because it sticks out in my brain so much. I was actually at work and I got a call And so I met my wife at the hospital. We're in the emerge. She's in like kind of like a triaging room, and there was probably about 6 people in the room. But I'll never forget the ER doctor. I wish I knew his name, but I can picture his face. He was like a general. He was just directing people. He was so confident. He was so just in charge. It gave us a sense of security and confidence. He was telling, one nurse, I want, BP readings every, 15 seconds. Parents, please let me know when you see her in and out, and I want it timed. He was back and forth, and he's like, I want this much of phenobarbital, which is an anti-seizure medication. And there was a point, and I don't remember how much time had elapsed. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 hours. I don't know. There was a point where he just said, stop. And the whole room went quiet, and he said, step away, and stepped away. And he turned to us so calm, and he said, I'm so sorry. I'm unable to fix this with medical intervention. I don't have a choice. I have to intubate. Otherwise, there could be some long-term risks. At the time, I actually didn't even know what intubation meant. I just said, like, if it wasn't for him being so confident and so just in charge, I don't know if we would have been receptive. I felt so okay with trusting his judgment. He was so good. It was absolutely incredible. For those that don't know what intubation is, they put my daughter on a ventilator. So she was on a ventilator for 3 days. And at that point, we knew something bigger is going on here. Something really is strange. She was put on daily seizure medications, and the moment from that last seizure episode, and then on daily seizure medication, we seen our daughter plateau. So up until that point, she was trending in the right direction in terms of speech, goo goo gaga, dama. She was walking, all those sorts of things. After that episode and the daily seizure medications, she plateaued for about 18 months. We didn't see much, if any, progression in anything, fine motor skills. We didn't see speech, anything like that. About 6 months, maybe 5, 6 months after that, my wife brought her into a doctor's appointment, and they gave the official diagnosis of autism. And they said she seems to be on the spectrum, everything that she's lagging. They did hearing tests, sight tests, all these sorts of things. And she doesn't lack in any of those areas. She has amazing vision. She can spot a plane in the sky that I can't even see. And her fine motor skills are improving. But at that point, they kind of just said, we're not, like, she's stuck at that 12 to 18 month category of a lot of, skills and proficiencies that children really should be developing. We chalked it up to the anti-seizure medication, because anti-seizure medication kind of does what you think it does. It slows down the brain. It calms down the brain activity to prevent, your brain from going into that mode. Fast forward a couple of years, throughout that time, we had additional testing done, and the test that really did it for us is they took a 3D image, an MRI image of her brain. So they actually took what they call slices, and they basically built a 3D model of her brain. They took these little layers and these pictures, and they built built a picture of her brain. They found a protein deposit in her central cortex, and it was described to us with the seizures that basically what it is, it's like throwing a wrench into an engine. So what it does is her neurons are firing. She's, wanting to laugh, wanting to play, wanting to learn. And when the neuron hits that, it's like a dead space. It's non-conducive to neurological activity. So her body goes into default mode. Her brain says something's wrong. I'm just going to put you in a safe state. And that's how it was described to us. So thankfully, we've been, I call it luck, call it fate, call it whatever you want to call it. We were doing a blood test with her, I want to say at about 4, maybe 3 years old. And one of the characteristics of our daughter is when she laughs, this might sound a little dangerous to people that might listen to this, but she laughs till she passes out. So once she goes into a laughter state, she doesn't know how to control her bodily function. So she'll laugh and laugh and laugh and go blue. And now we're very good at picking up on it, and we can kind of get ahead of it. But at the time, she would literally pass out in your arms. She would just be blue. She would pass out. So it was very traumatizing to people that weren't used to it. And people were asking us, how are you so calm? And it just, when it's a reality, you know how it is, right? When you're a parent, some of these things that, your reality is your reality. That happened when she was at a blood work test. And the doctor that was there that day, we have a children's hospital here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and thank God for that place. We donate to that place yearly. They are absolutely incredible. She kind of noticed that characteristic, and for some reason, she was made aware of a Harvard study that they were looking into this new genetic disorder that had to do with protein deposits in the central cortex, and it's referred to as SPG 47, which is spastic paraplegia 47, and it's 47 to 51, and I believe that has to do with the chromosomal makeup and your kind of your DNA. So she's on the very high end of that spectrum, but we got referred to a Harvard medical team and they tested us, they tested her, and they confirmed that it's a genetic makeup in the father and the mother that has to come together. So both parents have to have it, and then when you have it, there's a 25% chance that that will come together and your child may have this. So it's rare, and then there's a low percentage that it has to kind of everything has to align. So we've been working with them. Thankfully, she's off the anti-seizure medication. Basically, what happened is we never increased her dosage. She just kind of grew out of it. She has not had any more, knock on wood, any more medical episodes because of that. But she's thriving right now because of the autism diagnosis. We were absolutely blessed with lots of support, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, OTs, all these people that really, and the people that we were referred to and worked with her were incredible. And the school that she's in now, she has tons of support. She's absolutely thriving. She's learning to read, learning to write. She's obviously lagging in certain indicators, but she's a very happy child. And it's been a whirlwind of just 7 years. She'll be 8 next month. And yeah, a journey that we did not expect, but we're going through it and we're doing our thing.
Man, that's pretty harrowing because it's you imagine just like one episode, one medical emergency could really scar you as a dad. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, you just had back to back to back. But it sounds like you really padded that with just knowledge and trust in the professionals that you were working with. And it does sound like you made a lot of progress there. Now on the emotional side, because I'm sure you could be used to anything, but it's still traumatic. Do you have any, I don't know, kind of coping mechanisms, or how did you, where'd you find peace when that stuff was going on and everything was essentially completely out of your hands?
Yeah, so at first I didn't handle it well at all. I was at odds with my wife. I had resentment towards my daughter. This is my first child, so my marriage was really fragmented. There was a time between 1 year old and about two and a half, about an 18-month period where a very common characteristic of children with autism or children with neurological issues is they don't sleep through the night at some point. So basically what was happening is you have what's referred to as sleep cycles. You go through REM, deep sleep, all these sorts of things. She would go through a cycle, which is anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours, and then she'd be up for the day. And I'm not kidding. She would literally wake up. We'd put her down at 7, and at 9:30, she's like, "Hi." I would like not upset. She's totally, it's as if she had a 12-hour night's sleep. It was crazy. And so there was probably, I can probably count on two hands the amounts of full night sleep that she had in about an 18-month period. And so it's such an extreme. You go from a very well sleeping baby thinking that you're killing it, parenting. What is this? I could do this 10 times over, no problem. And then you just get thrown in the gauntlet and you just don't know how to handle it. And, when there's no sleep, everything else suffers. Intimacy, connection, self-care, personal development, your hobbies, everything goes out the window because you're in survival mode, truthfully. Nutrition goes out the window, so you're not taking care of yourself, and it just kind of snowballs. So there was a time where I wasn't dealing with it very well at all. And my wife, God bless her, she was super mom. She went into that mode. She's like, "You're a man, you'll deal with it. This kid's my responsibility. I don't really care what you do." She gave me every opportunity to sleep. I'm a shift worker, so I sleep during the day. So that actually kind of allowed us to divide and conquer a little bit, where I come off work, give my wife a couple hours, then I would go to sleep. But I mean, you're still 20-30% of the sleep you probably should be getting. And then
Yeah.
there was finally a breaking point where I had to reach out for help, and it was suggested to me to go to therapy, and I went to therapy, and it was just a way for me to just let out my frustrations and my feelings and my resentment and my desire to get out of this, like just like pull the band-aid. I'm like, I can't do this. This is crazy. And I believe you mentioned it in your first episode, the idea of only having to parent 50% of the time felt like a lifeline at the time. It truly did. It felt like, I'll be able to take a breath. And which in hindsight, I don't think that's the case. I think that's a very short-term solution for a long-term problem. I'm not going to unpack that at all. But therapy was a big one. But one thing that I didn't gravitate to right away, and this is something that I think every father that might be going through a traumatic event, but especially with your children, and the doctor that diagnosed my daughter with autism when my wife was there, I was not at that appointment, is she said something so ringing, and I spoke to my wife, and my wife mentioned this for years, but I never really took it to heart. Is she said you have to grieve the life you thought you'd have,
Mm.
and you have to learn to love the life that you've been given. So it's a situation where as a dad, especially a first time father, you have all these ideas of like, kid's gonna be in little league, and with a daughter, I'm gonna walk her down the aisle, and go to all these sports, and how am I gonna discipline them, and how am I gonna deal with teenage emotions? And when you're given a diagnosis as significant as autism and you realize that that life is likely not gonna happen, you have to give it time. You have to mourn and kind of bury that. You can't carry it with you because you're going to have resentment. You're going to really struggle with the fact that that's not your reality. And there's a phrase that goes around is comparison's the thief of joy. So when you go out and play in the park, or you're at a birthday party and your child's not being included, or kids being as innocent as they are, it's like, why is she so weird, or why is he so weird? And they don't come from a place of malice, but she's different, and
Yeah.
that's okay. But when my wife took that to heart a lot earlier than I did, and I think that was part of the recipe for her success in being able to weather the storm. For me, it took me a lot of years. It took me about 2 years after the diagnosis to really learn that, is to bury that, to know that rather than that I'm going to contribute to RSPs, and she's going to go to college and do all these things. That's likely not my roadmap. That's likely not my life, and that's okay. But you have to give yourself the ability to grieve your stereotypical parenting, kind of you're the exception, not the rule anymore.
Mhm.
You have to grieve it in whatever way suits you. Hopefully that's not substance or vices or anything like that. But trying to do it in the proper way is really going to be your recipe for success, is realize and accept that this is my path forward. It's not a bad path. I'm blessed with a happy daughter. My marriage is stronger than ever as a result of me realizing this. That was really probably the best advice that we received. And then obviously implementing it was another story for me. But once I did, it changed everything.
Man, that so much of that resonates with me. That the sleep number one. It's funny because you say like, oh, you're not sleeping as a parent. Even neurotypical parent, the amount of like reduction in sleep that you have when you have small children is astounding. And you think back to like when you were younger and you were going out all night, and then you wake up in the morning, you're like, well, that wasn't so bad. Like I'm awake, and it's like this twilight that just never ends, where you're just constantly tired, and you think like I've been tired in the past, but you've never been tired like that. Then you add the autism on there, because I had the same thing where it was about 3 years of just broken sleep and just trying to figure things out. And even with the dividing and conquering, it's still very taxing, because I think one thing that, it's you almost feel guilty when you do get sleep, because you're like, well, my spouse was the one that's having to pick up the weight, and I feel bad about that. So I'm going to punish myself by sleeping even less. And so, no, it sounds like not only did you manage the sleep situation well, but you managed the seeking out help. Because I think that's another thing that we do, just men in general, is like, I don't need therapy. I remember growing up, and it was like only crazy people go to therapy, and these days I'm like, you're crazy if you don't go to therapy. Like if you can afford it and it's available and you have an issue, why not? Why not take that step and simply talk to somebody about this situation? Because the other thing people think is like, well, I have friends to do that. But honestly, your friends, unless you have an exact friend that's been through this exact situation, there's just no way they can understand what you're going through. And honestly, dumping that on somebody who doesn't understand could affect that relationship, and then you could lose that as well. So it sounds like you did a great job navigating it. I love how you talk about your wife too, because that's similar for me, where I'm like, my wife's like, all star. It was like, oh, there's a situation, bam, 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 and she just went through all of the steps and did all of the research, and I'm just trying to like, can I help? whatever you need, I'll do what I can. But no, it sounds like you really have a good partnership. It sounds like you took the right steps as you went, and that's really admirable. And and now you guys are having another one, and that's
Yeah.
admirable too. Like I kind of lucked out. Well, I tell my son Declan because we had Damien, and then Declan was actually born 10 months later, and that's when we learned. Actually, he was a big indicator of like maybe there's something different because my son Damien slept through the night. Like I want to say like within my wife says like 6 weeks he's sleeping through the night. I was like I think it was like a week, and we were the same way. We were like,
Wow.
I guess we're just awesome parents. Like everybody's just a bunch of wusses that don't know how to do this thing. And then you learn and you find out like, no, you're not awesome. And here's your reward is years without sleep. So no, that's quite a journey. But so fantastic that you were able to get all that help too from all the therapists and the school that she's going to. Is that a normal, a neurotypical school, or is it a autism type school?
It's a normal school. It's a Catholic school. So one thing that my wife and I have discovered, kind of reinforcing our marriage, going through some of these struggles and deciding to have another one, that was a big leap in and of itself, right? When you don't have kids close together and you're going through this battle, some people might be like, you want to risk doing that again? And there's a lot of elements into that. But she goes to a Catholic school, rooted in faith, and it's been one of the greatest places ever. They support her in so many ways. She's just a happy kid, right? Like, when you think of autism, you think of maybe violence, or you think of maybe, like hard to work with and stuff. She's very passive. And I think that's a trait of girls with autism compared to boys. I
Oh,
think it
yeah.
basically just takes, your natural proclivities and it kind of just exuberates them. So boys are just rambunctious and do their thing. So you're gonna just exaggerate that. Same thing with girls. They're very submissive, very passive, and I think it just exaggerates that.
Mm.
So we're very lucky in that sense where we don't have to deal with some of that stuff. But at the same time, she has her niches and stuff. Like when anything bad happens, she plugs her ears and she runs away. Like that's kind of her natural instinct. And we're trying to curb that a little bit of teaching her a little bit of spine, a little bit, kind of, teaching her how to deal with adversity. It's not the end of the world. Oh my goodness, you spilled something. Look how easy it is to clean it up. Wow, who would have thought it?
Mm.
Those sorts of things, right? But the school that she goes to, they're pretty incredible. We've actually developed a personal relationship with a lot of her teachers. And then again, just a blessing is my wife, who was a stay-at-home mom for 5 years. We made the decision when we found out that she had these medical issues. There's no way we can balance two full-time jobs and her maintain the home, maintain all the appointments. It was just a priority, and we were willing to downgrade our lifestyle. Thankfully, we didn't have to. I'm in a position where I make enough money where um, I'm able to kind of bless her with that. And that's part of, when we talk about segmented relationships, when you find out about this stuff, understanding your role. I
Mm.
was blessed with a wife that understood that, listen, I know that you kind of are taking it internally and that you have a sense of unearned guilt that you're sleeping and I'm not, but you're providing and I'm not. You're, giving us the means and giving me the ability to do this, especially in the modern era. It's so difficult with middle class families to be able to have the blessing of this. So missing the appointments is just it's a natural result of this, right? And it's not that I want to, it's just once you understand your role and you kind of play off each other and have open communication, again, it changes everything, right? And I was just so appreciative of that. Going back to what you said about the friends and stuff, I think the ego as men plays a big
Mm.
part. We're fixers. We're naturally fixers, especially good men. Especially, when you surround yourself with good people that you trust, my best man at my wedding, I'd trust him with my life. Putting that on him not only wouldn't be fair, it wouldn't make sense. Because the difference of going to a therapist or going to professional help or going to other dads or on a podcast like this, I mean, you have a conversation when people can't relate, you get those desired fixed answers that really
Mm.
don't it doesn't have a lot of it's like, oh man, I don't know what you're going through, but I hope you're doing well. And it's like, I appreciate that, and I know that it comes from a place of good, like they're trying to fix it. It's just it doesn't land, and when it doesn't land, it feels like it's, your point's not getting across. You kind of get into this frustrated kind of Ferris wheel of emotions where like you're dealing with all this, but there's not the right person on the other end of the conversation that it lands with. And professionals are trained to, ask the open-ended questions, absorb things, challenge your status quo in a healthy way. Those sorts of things are super important. So that's where I think that that needs to be acknowledged, that yes, you want to lean on your friends, but there is a purpose to these professionals in these spaces that can really be your outlet and help you in ways where you're kind of wolf pack or whatever, masculine connotation you want to put to your group.
Mm.
They just can't do it in the same way. So doing that is going to yield a lot more fruit, especially when you don't really have a foundation, or if you're in the early stages of it, it's really going to help mitigate some future damages.
No, I totally agree. And the other side about the friends that you had before, and this is kind of going back to what you said about saying goodbye to that life that you thought you had, was that they'll never understand, because the time requirement that you have as an autistic father is like 24/7. There's no off time. There's no because we think about my son Declan is neurotypical and he's 11, and now he will go spend the night at a friend's house, or we'll go to some social event, and he could run off with his friends, and we could say, oh, that's fine, he's going to be with it. But with the autistic child, it's basically, well, I describe it as like, imagine when if you're a neurotypical dad, having a 2 or 3 year old, and you had to follow them around, and you were concerned the whole time, and it was a 24-hour job, just making sure they didn't kill themselves, essentially. That's what it's like, except they're getting bigger and they're getting more capable, but it's still that same level of worry. So it's just not something that they could understand. And honestly, you don't have time for the same time commitment that you gave to that relationship in the past, where it was like, hey, let's go away for the weekend, or do some crazy stuff at night and not worry about the next day. It's like, now that's not an option anymore. So you do have to find a new community, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And it's it's a brave new world. But your guys' decision to have another child, that is very respectable, because honestly, I always say my son Declan was like a miracle baby, because if we had found out about my son Damien at like 18 months, we probably wouldn't have had another one, especially as it progressed and the situation was just
Yeah.
getting more and more clear. Like, this is your life. And we may not have. So I'm always like, oh, thank God. But you know exactly what you're in, and you're doing it again. And that's very brave. And kudos to you and your wife. But could you walk me through that kind of, if you don't mind elaborating on that, just
Yeah.
the thought process? Because I know a lot of people are like, yeah, and that was our concern. Like, what if it happens again?
Yeah, when you're going through it, you kind of experience this reality of worst case scenario, and you don't realize how low these percentages are. But it's a reality, so you're just like, that's just the way it is. So for the first little bit, we had zero intentions on having a second child. We're just like, there is no way. We had to go through the genetic testing. That was probably the first thing, is we got the appropriate tests to see kind of like percentages, and kind of seeing like, what is this just our reality? Is there no way we can have children without this? So we kind of did our due diligence, so to speak, with that sort of thing. But it was when my daughter was about 5, is we started surrounding ourselves with some pretty incredible people. Like I said, my daughter's school, new friendship circles. Like I said, we kind of, discovered faith and rooted in just, loving everybody, and realizing that, it takes a village. You hear that old saying, because it's so true. It's so true. Even just with neurotypical children, but especially special needs children. If it wasn't for my mom, my wife and I would be divorced for sure.
Mm.
She has been an absolute staple in just saving us, and just, unconditionally loving her granddaughter. Who loves her in the same way. We surrounded ourselves with people that really started opening our eyes, and asking us the questions of like, when you think of legacy, or sorry, when you have children with special needs, you start thinking of your legacy. You start thinking of long term. You start thinking of, I'm going to have a dependent. What happens if something happens to me?
Mm.
What happens, you can't have the typical godparents, because if they're not used to children with special needs, what do? You kind of go through these. And I think as men, we go through it more because that's just how we, ruminate on these things. We started being asked these questions and asking ourselves these questions, like, would it matter? Like if they told us that we could have another one of our daughters, would we love them any less? Well, of course not. That's absolutely not, right? We think that they're an absolute gift, and I absolutely love my daughter in every way, shape, and form, as every father should. And then we started, people would ask us, and they would say, like, they would mention things that you'll never regret the kids you have. You might regret the kids you don't have.
Mm.
When you start thinking of legacy, you start thinking of the possibilities, you start craving that desire to have the life and, that parenting journey that is more of the norm rather than the exception. And when we started getting asked those questions and talking about these questions and really kind of my wife and I come into the same answer, no, like we would love another child. And if we had another one like this, we would love them the same. And it's interesting because when you realize if you have another child after going through something like this, you're not starting from ground zero again. You're not as scared as you were the first go. You're seasoned. You've done the reps. It's still going to be difficult, but you're not the same person. You have experience, you have value, you have knowledge that's going to make you weather the storm different. And you're going to have a maturity. And as long as you're in that good mental space and you're getting the support you need and you're confident in yourself and you know that I can do this, I'm a good person. My partner and I have a great, arrangement and we can make this work. It's really irrelevant at that point. If you want another one and you have the ability and that's something you desire, do it. You'll never ever regret it. But there is a high likelihood that you could get into your mid 40s, early 50s. Wouldn't it have been great if we just had one more, two more?
Hmm.
And it's knowing that you're not starting from zero and you're not starting from that, scared, don't understand what's going on, lack of knowledge, questioning everything, survival mode. I mean, yeah, the sleep's probably going to suck again if we are, blessed with another child with some issues, but it's kind of irrelevant at that point, right? You're going to love them the same. It's not going to matter. You're going to be a happy family. You're going to do what's best for your child, and now you're armed with a toolbox of things that you can do to really make sure that you're the best parent and the best partner possible.
Man, well, that's such a great message, and I love how the partnership between you and your wife is really what made that decision possible, because it's like we handled this, and it's funny because with me and my wife, we're the same way, where it's like, man, I don't know. Yeah, there could be harder situations than what we've been through, but we've been through some tough stuff, and we're obviously, set for it, and we're stronger because of it, and it didn't break us. And so, what else could? Bring it on. And so, I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic, and it's amazing because a lot of people never have a relationship like that, where it's like you guys are a team and you're gonna figure it out, and so whatever, let's go. So I think that's a great message for people, and it's a good message that, how you said there was the resentment, there was the hurt and the stress and all that kind of stuff, and if you can work through it, if you can keep on pushing, then you're in a situation where you're building something that's, you talk about legacy, but honestly, it's like anything that's good right now is great. That's all it has to be, and it sounds like you guys are doing that. So just for the new dads out there that may be starting this autism fatherhood journey, what kind of advice would you give them, just from hanging in their perspective?
Yeah, I think the first one is that grieving. You really have to, when you're given a long-term diagnosis like that really derails your plans that you've been thinking about for 9 months or even longer if you've been talking about having children. You have to give it the proper time to grieve and bury it. And it's not to say that it goes away. It's no different than if somebody was to lose a child or somebody was, unsuccessful in having children, and you kind of, you bring on that trauma and that really that damage, right? You kind of you got to give it the attention it needs. You got to give it the respect it needs. This is something that you've been planning for, and you kind of have to just realize that it's not a death sentence. It's not automatic divorce or automatic, my friendship circles are gone. Yes, your life will change. It certainly will. But as regular parents, parents with just, neurotypical children can attest to, when you see these milestones that your children go through and these new moments that maybe a doctor told you would never happen. Oh, that kid's never going to walk. And they start walking at, 7, 10, 15, whatever it may be. They say their first complete sentence when, for years, it's just been this fragmented language. There's nothing more rewarding as a parent when you can weather the storm. The small victories are massive. The small victories really just uplift you in a way that it just cannot be explained. And like you said, everybody's journey is so different. So really just taking solace in that, but giving the respect to the life you thought you'd have is so crucial. It was such a TSN turning point for me, truthfully. On top of that is seek help, whatever's available to you. If there's financial implications, there's lots of governmental resources in both Canada and the US, free resources. They may not be the best experts and stuff because, everything government funded seems to have an asterisk attached to it. But whatever is within your means and your ability, reach out. therapists, men's groups. I know, now we're in the age of 2025, this podcast is just a phenomenal example of realizing that there are other people going through the shit. And when you hear that, it sounds almost, unsensible, but knowing that other people are going through this, you're like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one suffering, right? It's like when you're running that marathon, knowing every single person's running 26 miles, you're like, okay, my legs might hurt, but so does everybody else's. So it doesn't feel that bad. So that's also a mechanism. And then as well, having or trying to have open communication with your partner or your support, whatever that is. If there was something that happened before you got the diagnosis and it just didn't work, understanding that it does take a village. And when you have a child with somebody, regardless if you're a team together or if it's fragmented, that you have to have clear communication. It's no longer about whatever your issues are with that other adult. It's what's for the common good. I'm blessed that I'm not in that position. And when you said that statistic of 80% of special needs parent, like I'm not surprised because I had those thoughts. And if I wouldn't have had the support I had, I'd probably be a part of that statistic. We've done a lot of maturing and a lot of growing and realizing that the bigger picture is a lot more important than the little minutia issues that my wife and I may have had at the time. Money at that point becomes irrelevant. Keeping up with the Joneses becomes irrelevant. You get so center focused. And again, I'm speaking to the good people out there. I'm speaking to the people that take this. They want to be good dads. They want to be good partners. Unfortunately, some of this does break people, and it is what it is. I'm not shocked because there are people that are dealing with an absolute extreme, like, feeding tubes and wheelchairs and mobility issues. And you start realizing that, you have this, again, legacy or whatever it may be. I would say those three things is just, grieve it, understand that your journey as a parent is different. Reach out for support in any way that's available to you, whether it be, I'm sure your DM box is open. My DM box is open. There's lots of men's groups and support groups out there. There's hotlines, just whatever is available. Just please reach out and don't feel like it's all or nothing. It's not a binary situation. It's not I'm either a really good dad to a child with special needs or I'm out. Please don't do that. Men's suicide is an issue, all these sorts of things, mental health, just get the help and support you need. And then third is communication. If you are blessed to be still in a relationship, set those structures, respect each other in that way, understand that there's a ringing phrase that my wife and I kind of discovered is this is for new parents as well, but especially parents with special needs is the days are long, but the years are short.
Mm.
When you're up at 2:30 in the morning dealing with a crying child that will not sleep and you've gone through your 10th medical appointment for the week, you literally sit there and look in the room and this, you're trying to rock this baby or you have a fully grown child and you're like, how am I doing this? When you blink, years pass. So it's just weather the storm and understand, live in the moment. The days are going to be long, the weeks are going to be long, but you're going to blink and years will pass by. So just understand that that is how it is and that's okay. And you'll be just fine.
Thank you so much, Alfred. This has been fantastic, and it's your messages are just so clear, and I know it's almost like a professional delivery of how to raise autism because I'm like, man, you guys did all the steps, you sought the support, you talked through it, you communicated, you got help. I mean, it's pretty astounding how you've been able to navigate this. So good for you, and I think you're an excellent example of how this can go. But again, it's every situation is unique, and I think you've done a really good job of being thankful for the help that you've been given and for the wife that you have. And actually just, you should be thankful for just your own personal maturity and understanding of what you're going through. Because for me personally, it's like, I think I sort of did the things you're talking about, but a lot of times it was, the grieving the life that you would have had is an enormous step, like you said. And if you could let go of that, which I think is just healthy in general. Most people need to do that because guess what? Life isn't going to go the way you thought it would be. And that's totally normal. I think the weird thing would be if it's like, oh yeah, I just planned it out and then it happened and then I'm great. It's like, no, because most of the time what I found out is even if you could plan the things you did plan and they went the way you thought they would go, it still might not even be the thing that you wanted or needed in the first place. So don't qualify it. But thank you so much, Alfred. It's been fantastic. Definitely want to keep in touch because I think I'd love to hear how it goes. You mentioned that Harvard study, so if that happens, I'd love to hear what's going on with that. And also, congrats on the new baby. And I hope you guys have a screaming no sleep for the first year. Because that's what happened with my son. He had colic for 4 months. And so we didn't sleep, even though my autistic son was sleeping. So congrats and excellent work.
Yeah, no, I thank you so much. And yeah, I just want to give you congrats and thanks for opening something like this up, right? This is so raw, it's so real. It can be a sensitive topic for some people. Some people may be a bit distant, but podcasts, I'm a huge fan of just the format, the authenticity of it, the natural, purveying of information. When you have something like this, it's not polished, it's not in a studio, it's not pod rolled. This is going to help a lot of people, and it's not something that's talked about enough. So kudos to you for bringing this to light. I think this in and of itself is a resource for people, and I couldn't wait to jump on this opportunity. If I'm able to help one person, or somebody can relate to our story, that's a win. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that before, other than with professionals, but having it with other people and other dads in these spaces, it's invaluable. So thanks again, man, for the opportunity and opening up this space. It's fantastic. Appreciate you.
Well, my pleasure. And like you said, if it helps one person, like I'd be super happy with that because at this point, after so many years of growth and understanding, I'm like, that's the only thing I actually find value in is helping other people and helping, like it's doable. All of this is totally doable. It's different than you thought it would be, but it's doable. And there's other guys like you out there that can do it. So thanks again.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Dads in Autism Land podcast. If you know somebody who could use this advice, please share this. And if you'd like to come on the show, please let us know because I'm looking for dads and we're going to talk it all out and it's going to be great. So stay tuned. And if you're interested in this podcast, please subscribe.